Moving along swiftly to our next speaker, who's going to tell us how happiness can be made into a business model. She is the Chief Happiness Officer and the CEO of Delivering Happiness, which is a company. I almost said country, that would have been cool, right?
Could be a country.
Very happy country. A company she founded in 2010 with Tony Shi, the CEO of Zappo. So without further ado, please a round of applause and join me in welcoming Jenn Lim.
Slowly up here so we can enjoy some of that music. I've been to a few conferences and have done a few talks in my life, and I have to say I've never had to follow so much discussion on reproduction, DNA, and sex. So I don't know if that's an indication of Sweden, but that's pretty cool. Show of hands, just a poll. How many people in the room feel they have an understanding of predicting long-term sustainable happiness? Well, the good news is that you're not alone, and that research shows it's actually most people don't know how to predict it. Take these people, for example. Melissa, top right, just received her financial statement from Merrill Lynch, thinking all along, if I work hard, make money, and save it in my 401k, I'll be okay. Apparently this was not the case. Bottom right, Stella, she thought a week prior that it would be a good idea to find a boyfriend. And a week later, from the look of her face at this call, clearly that was not the case. It's really, really interesting to me because when we all think about it, like take it back to this room again, and if you think and you ask yourself, what are your goals in life? And no matter who you ask, where you are in life, typically, if you ask yourself why are those your goals over and over again, it eventually comes back to the same answer, just to be happy. So I thought this was really fascinating because here we are, we're physiologically, as human beings, hardwired to be happy and find happiness. Yet we're at this day and age that we have so much access, so much information, so much technology, but we're still unable to figure out what it takes to give us long-term sustainable happiness. And there's actually really interesting research done around this. We hear it all the time. People say, when I achieve this, I'll be happy, or when I get there, I'll be happy. And everyone hears about lottery winners, that they actually, if you survey them like a year or two down the road, they're actually less happy than they were before. And what's also interesting is that the inverse is true too. They've been surveying people that lose their use of their limbs. And a lot of the times, those people, 1, 2, 3 years down the road, are actually happier than they were before. So going down this path, I started reflecting on myself because I don't believe I was necessarily like the happy-go-lucky kid growing up. So I started reflecting, how did I get into this path of being so passionate about happiness? And so I started thinking about when I started going to school at Cal, at UC Berkeley. And I'm Asian American, so I have Asian American parents, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with sort of the stereotypical upbringing of traditional Asian American parents. So basically, I thought there was 3 quintessential things, I guess, to be a success in life. Number 1 was get into a good school. Number 2 was be a doctor or a lawyer. And number 3 was learn a variety of musical instruments. And so I thought I had it made. I got into Cal, I was studying pre-med, and I had a few years of piano and drums underneath my belt. So I was excited. I got to school, started studying, and I realized, this is totally not for me. And I started exploring. And so I finally wandered into something called Asian American Studies. And so I told my parents, and I was so excited, and they automatically freaked out. They said, are you serious? We're sacrificing all these things for you and your brothers. We're working all these jobs for your opportunities. Your great-great-grandparents sailed the Pacific Ocean in an ocean liner and almost died so that you can study yourself. And totally guilt-ridden, I was like, yes, I'm going to stand firm, I'm going to do this. And I graduated and I finally knew what they were talking about. I didn't have a job. So it was my turn to start freaking out. And I started cold calling every company that I can think of. And luckily for me, that's when the internet was born. So I became an internet consultant at KPMG. And all of a sudden, life was easy. the money, title, status just came without a thought. But as everyone knows, the bottom fell out and the dot-com busted, and I got laid off. And I felt like the most ultimate loser because all the things that I thought meant something, the money, title, status, really meant nothing at all. So this is the part where, actually, how many people are familiar with Delivering Happiness, the book? Okay, so if you've read it, then this is the part where Tony, the CEO of Zappos, and I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. And what's interesting in hindsight is that he had just sold his company, Link Exchange, to Microsoft for about $285 million, just right before the Kilimanjaro trip, not too long. And here I was, laid off. What was interesting is that we were both thinking about the same things without realizing. We were both thinking about what are we going to do for the rest of our lives that we'll be passionate about, that we wouldn't fear failure. Obviously, we're at the opposite end of the financial spectrum, but it was interesting to see that we were both coming to this part of our life at the same time. And so here we climb Mount Kilimanjaro on an ultimate high, come back, and everyone has these moments in their life when the bottom falls out and you have no idea what reality is anymore and you have to rethink everything. And for me, that's when I lost my dad. So after that happened, I was thinking, why am I doing this? What is it that I want to do that every day is meaningful to me, that every day is of substance, so that I can rest sleepily and know that any day it can be gone, but at least there was meaning in it. So that's when I came back and explored. I just considered life to be a green field. I did things that I never thought I could make a career out of, but I actually felt meaning and passion from. I started writing, doing graphic design, I started making films. I mean, just things that I thought, this is what life really means to me. And through that process, I started consulting at Zappos and learning about this evolution of this company. How many people are familiar with Zappos by any? Okay, cool. And this company that started as, I want to be the biggest online retailer in the world, and evolving to a point where it's more about customer service. And then again, evolving to a point where it's all about company culture and treating your employees right. And so here I was thinking, this is restoring my faith in the fact that there are businesses that can consider happiness as a business model. And then fast forward a few years later, here I am with Delivering Happiness as CEO. So now that that's been established, I keep getting asked the same question. Can you really use happiness in business as a business model or in real life? And so the best example I have that, of course, is where it all pretty much started, Zappos. And this is actually a picture of Zappos in Las Vegas. There's not always a rainbow over it, funnily enough. And if you're ever in Vegas, I would highly recommend a tour. It's free. They'll pick you up in a shuttle. They'll take you back to your hotel. But it's just an amazing thing to witness what goes beyond these doors. And when I think about Zappos, this is the quote that actually comes first to mind. It's by Maya Angelou. People will forget what you do, or people will forget what you say, but they'll never forget the way you made them feel. And that is sort of the guiding principle for a company. And that really sort of rings through all and everything that they do. So this is a picture of Zappos' Kentucky warehouse. Some might say it's a woman's dream closet. Other people say it's a man's ultimate nightmare. But what is interesting is that you can kind of see that it means it's an amazing facility. The technology, the investment that was made into making this happen so that someone on the East Coast could order their shoes at 8 o'clock after they put their kids to bed. And by the time they wake up in the morning, before they go to work, the shoes are on the doorstep. And that goes to show not to be bragging about, wow, we're so awesome with our technology, look at us. It's really coming back to this simple concept that is pervasive in Zappos is the personal emotional connection, the PEC, is all about that customer experience, all about creating stories so that people will remember, hey, can you believe it? I just got my shoes and I just ordered it last night. This also goes back down to the customer service reps. They are pretty much given the freedom to make their own decisions on how they want to interact with the customers. And the underlying thing is just be real and just be yourself. One time a woman called in and said, my mom just passed away, I have a pair of shoes that we just bought, is there any way we can return it? And I said, of course, no problem. But the rep just took it upon herself, this was not taught or part of any training, to write her a handwritten letter, to send her flowers, and to ask the UPS delivery guy to go there personally to pick it up. And then it became a story that this person told another person and eventually ended up online. Another example of some things that Zappos is sort of playing around with is that the calls that are coming in are actually being traced in terms of where their location is, so that they can be routed to the person that came from the same place. So let's say the caller is calling from Austin, Texas, and that gets routed to the customer service rep that was born and raised in Austin, Texas, so that they can have a real dialogue about, oh, you remember that bakery on the corner, or remember that restaurant that we left to go eat. And again, it all goes back to this one fundamental thing of how can you be yourself as a rep and develop these personal and emotional connections with your customers. But what's interesting about Zappos is that it's so known for their customer service, but what people don't know is that their number one priority is actually company culture. And the whole notion of this is that if you get your company culture right, the rest of the things like great customer service and profitability actually comes more naturally. And this is a video, actually, I don't know if, oh, could you please play the video? Basically, this was kind of viral in the last week, and I thought I'd show. So these birds are called starlings. This whole act of what they're doing is called murmuration. And this was taken in, I think it was in the lake in Ireland. But what's interesting about this is the closest analogy I can make about the culture at Zappos. It's because actually they don't really know physiologically why this happens with these birds, but it's almost this immediate sense of you turn left, if someone to your left, if the bird to the left is turning left, you instantly turn left as well. And it's sort of ingrained in their DNA. And that's how I think how Zappos, and any company for that matter, can scale their culture. Because if you get your DNA right, if you have your core values that your employees can really, really believe in, then you're able to hire more people and scale that in the sense that you're comfortable in letting them make their own decisions because you're all based on the same DNA. And so how do we make culture number one priority? I won't go over all of these things, but one of the things that we do is that at the end of the training, which is a 5-week training, most of it is around customer service. Anyone who's going through the process, whether you're in legal or technology, you still have to sit and answer phones so you get that experience. And at the end of that 5 weeks, if you're still considered, we actually offer $4,000 for you to quit. And the thought behind that is actually, we want people to really consider and think about what they're doing. Are they going to accept these core values as something they really, really will adhere to? And the reason why it's at $4,000 now is because actually it started at $200 and not enough people are taking it. Right now I think it's averaging about 2 to 3%. Another thing that we do is, actually, I think it's coming, but this is a lot of words, but this is just excerpted from the book Delivering Happiness. And basically it's, I would distill it as this, like everyone is considered to be a customer at Zappos, whether you're a partner, whether you're a vendor, whether you're an employee. I think the whole customer service angle is the reason why it works so well is because they consider everyone a customer. And just FYI, I'm going to make this presentation available to anyone who wants those notes. Just send me an email. Another thing we do is called the Culture Book. And this was kind of an interesting sort of experiment when we just started implementing these core values at a time when it was just kind of an experiment. And so the whole idea was just, let's ask our employees to define company culture. And so every year we ask them to write 2 or 3 paragraphs, and we publish it in a physical book, word for word, no edits except for typos or grammar. And it's been an interesting sort of evaluation of what culture is and whether or not it's actually scaling and going stronger or weakening. Because it's a transparent look at what a snapshot of what's happening. All the good stuff and all the bad stuff presented to everyone that wants to read it. And now that we send it to anywhere in the world, it's just interesting. It's kind of become a brand book of what Zappos really represents. And it's, Zappos actually doesn't ship outside of the US, but we've got fans and people that talk about us all the time from Japan or Brazil or what have you. And it's just really interesting how most of the people sometimes don't even know what Zappos does as a business, but they just believe so much in the brand and the why they're doing it. So while this was all going on at Zappos, what became interesting on the other side is the academic side of people actually doing the research. So these books, Tribal Leadership, Good to Great, did the research of trying to understand what makes a brand or a company long-term and sustainable. And the interesting thing, it was not about the numbers, it was not about the operations, it was about two things. It was about having core values, building that culture around it, and having a higher purpose. And a higher purpose in the sense that you have something that your employees can inspire to do. Not just be motivated to do, like a carrot on a stick, but by definition of inspiration that comes within, that they want to do it for a higher purpose. And so, I guess again, going back to Zappos as an example of what we believe that happiness can be a business model, is that about 2 years ago now, Amazon acquired it for $1.2 billion at the time of closing. And all of that, most of their customers are totally word of mouth, and that we felt like built through the ideas of having customer service and company culture as the #1 priorities. So while this was happening on the business side, I took my own sort of personal interest into this whole notion of the science of happiness. If Zappos is delivering happiness, what does happiness really mean? And so there's a whole new field, relatively new, in the last few years called the science of happiness and positive psychology that I started looking into. And from reading up on these things, there's actually a lot of different frameworks that these scientists and researchers have developed. This is just one of them. These are, I guess, the 4 basic things in how to increase someone's well-being or happiness in one's life. Perceived control, basically meaning like you have the feeling that you are able to make decisions in your life and have the freedom to do that. Perceived progress, being able to feel that you're learning every day and growing in different ways. Connectedness, which is a huge one, is the number of breadth and depth of your relationships. And the highest one, I guess the most long-term sustainable one, to answer that question we were talking about before, is having vision and meaning and a higher purpose. Whatever it is that you're doing, the higher purpose that you're doing something beyond yourself. And so what was really revelatory, I guess, as these parallel tracks was going between business and the science of happiness, is that if you put them side by side, they're actually really analogous to one another. For a business, profits are a necessity. On the human life side, pleasure is, although it could be short term. And beyond, up top of that is the passion. And on top of that is seeking a higher purpose. And so what's interesting is this long-term sustainable companies that are successful had that model. And we as humans, through the science of happiness and research, can attain that in the same way. So if all this research shows that the vision, meaning, higher purpose is what really, really leads to long-term sustainable happiness, how does it apply to your own life or the company that you're about to start or the company that you've already started? Because going back to me and delivering happiness, it's started from Zappos, and then Tony and I worked on this book together called Delivering Happiness, and it did really well, and we're up to about 18 languages in the world, which is really unexpected because we weren't sure what to anticipate, because it was totally written as a business book, but so. I mean, in the sense that the businesses would reach out to and says, thank you so much for writing this book. I want to apply it to my own business, or I want to start my own company now based on these things of core values and happiness. But what we didn't expect was the non-business people that responded in a similar way. So people working in government or nonprofits or hospitals, teachers and students from all over the world were coming and chiming into us and saying, how do we apply this to what I'm doing in my life too? There was this mom that she wrote and said, even applying it to her family, she said, thank you, I want to be a CMP, a chief managing parent of my household now, because you wrote this book. All the way to the other end, where there's a gentleman from New York who's a trader, and he said, I was actually on the verge of suicide, and I came across this book, and now I see where there are ways that I can have a little bit of hope again. So that really struck me, because I didn't even think that was going to happen. It felt like there was almost a tipping point in the world that people would want to take these concepts seriously and apply it to their life. And then we did this whole bus tour. We bought a bus to go cross country, and it was less about selling books. It was actually more about spreading the message and meeting the people that are emailing us their stories every day. So we bought this bus from Dave Matthews Band. You guys You guys, Dave Matthews Band fan? Yeah. Actually, it's from the Dave Matthews Band bass player, so apparently they're doing pretty well still. So while we were doing this tour, we just started getting more and more emails and people telling us that they were applying it to their lives. So that's what struck me, is there's something going on that we need to do something about. And so that's why we decided to evolve it into a movement. Basically a startup, a company, a social startup, but with a cause to spread and inspire happiness in the world. Because to me, I guess it just makes simple scientific sense, it makes business sense, and it makes just basic human sense. I mean, if we have a chance, why wouldn't we want to try and increase the number or the percentage of happiness in the world? And these are our principles. I see it's like a little Slurpee drink in the States. I don't know if you have it here, but basically inspiration for community is connect people to a meaningful community that people that want to live a purposeful life. Education, teach and empower people of stuff we're learning in science of happiness. And experience, making meaningful experiences for people, because we all know at the end of the day, it's not the products that you buy per se, it's the experiences that you get out of it with the people that you care about in life that lead to ultimate happiness. And now we've launched, let's say, I think it was in March, this year. And since then, it's been just this wonderful sort of network globally of people coming out of the woodwork, either saying, hey, this is what we're doing already, how can we do this together? Or saying, hey, I would love to implement this wherever I am as well, whether it's business, workplace, community, or at home. And so that's pretty much what we're up to and what we believe in how applying the signs of happiness into business and regular life. I wanted to announce if you guys wanted a copy of the presentation, or if you want me to send a culture book to you, just give me your physical mailing address. My email is jen@deliveringhappiness.com with 2 N's. So hopefully, I mean, I guess the whole point of this is that if somehow this inspires someone to, think about customers and delivering them happiness, or thinking about your employees in your new entrepreneurship, and how that you can deliver them happiness. Or maybe just thinking about our own lives and how these concepts of science happiness might be able to increase overall our well-being, and answer that question of, can we determine our most sustainable long-term happiness? And I'd love to hear from you, because hopefully, I'm a little biased, I really, really believe that we can nudge this world to a happier place. Thank you.